Watch Symposium, I'm Austin. All right, so welcome to part 2. In part 1, we took a look at a comment from Danny, and it was a thoughtful, thought-provoking, interesting comment that got me thinking, right? And this is a comment on the other end of the spectrum in the sense that it's questionable, but it does provide some room for an interesting discussion, I think. And this is a comment from Jimmy V. He writes, "Dude, Citizens, Seiko, Casio, and Timex were real sports watches." I've never heard of the brand Dude. Oh, I get it. Dude, Citizens, Seiko, Casio, and Timex were real sports watches. Okay, terrible joke, sorry. Jimmy V writes, he continues, "Rolex SS sports watches were never tool watches. They were backup watches for the country club set, so they didn't damage their 18K gold day dates. Does anyone on YouTube know anything about Rolex beyond the last 4 years? Most YouTubers apparently have no clue as to what went on in the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. Talk to Craig Shippe and learn something." Okay, so Craig Shippe is another YouTube watch guy. I haven't seen a lot of his videos, but from what I understand, he was a Rolex guy. Now he's more of a Grand Seiko guy. I think he has it out for Rolex a bit. He's not the watch guru I would be listening to for sure. I would point you in the direction of Archie over Craig Shippe. But Jimmy V, who knows? Maybe this is Craig Shippe in disguise. Are you Craig Shippe, Jimmy V? I don't think so. I don't think so, because I asked repeatedly for Jimmy V to provide a link to Craig Shippe's video where he spouts this off. I wanted to see the author of Jimmy V's ignorance myself. But I give Craig Shippe more credit than this. I don't think he's that stupid. But Jimmy V, I defy you to provide us a link with Shippe saying this. I would love to see it. All right, so now there's one sentence I really want to highlight. I want you to put a pen in it because it's central to what Jimmy V says. Rolex SS sports watches were never tool watches. All right, so, you know, if you look at the history of the brand, I think, and I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Jimmy V and company here, I think possibly they may look at the marketing aspect of marketing their watches as tool watches as an indication that they never really were tool watches. They were just, that was just a marketing gimmick. But the fact of the matter is that Jacques Cousteau, Tom Shepard, all the Comex divers, Edmund Hillary, all put their faith in this watch brand and used it. And the watch performed in the field. And yes, there was a marketing aspect to Rolex's decision to become a maker of tool watches. But does that make it any less of a tool watch? You know, from the moment that Hans Wilsdorf decided to strap an oyster to Mercedes Gleitz's neck to swim the English Channel, that was sort of the moment where they decided, okay, if we associate these watches with these people doing adventurous, dangerous, and extreme things, then that's good for us. But here's the thing, you have to have a watch that can perform in that situation, and Rolex could. So I think, you know, it's sort of which came first, the chicken or the egg thing. I don't think it really matters, but I suppose somebody could say, you know, Rolex or Hans Wilsdorf was saying, okay, what we want to do is we want to use these people to sell this as a tool watch, okay? So let's make a tool watch so they can do it. Now, I don't think it went like that. I think what it was is, we've got a tool watch, we have a strong watch, and we're going to prove it. We're going to give it to this person, they're going to put it through its paces, and when it performs well, we've got something that we can market. And I think that's the way it went. I think it started out as a strong tool watch, but obviously Rolex uses and used these instances of their watches being used in extreme situations as a marketing angle, because we all love that persona of the Explorer watch, the adventure watch, the watch that can keep up with some of the most extreme people in the world. But these watches could do it, okay? And it just wasn't an empty marketing angle. These watches really could perform and did perform, and people put their lives in the hands of these watches. I think you can have both. You can have a tool watch that is marketed as a tool watch, and just because it's marketed as a tool watch doesn't mean it's any less of a tool watch. Now, all right, so in the 1950s, 1960s, and early 70s, if you really needed a watch in an extreme situation, if you were an adventurer, an explorer, somebody who's really gonna put it or be in an extreme situation and needed a watch to keep up, you would go for a Rolex. The waterproofness, the accuracy, and the strength, and that's really the mark of a tool watch. So that changed, of course, in the late 70s, and G-Shocks and Quartz started coming out, and that's another thing. So, he brings up, most YouTubers apparently have no clue as to what happened in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s. It doesn't really matter what happened. That might be the point at which Rolex started to deviate from the tool watch, but it's sort of irrelevant because in the 1950s and the 1960s, these were tool watches. They started out as tool watches, and that's just the fact of the matter, Jimmy V. Let me read two sentences, and I'm going to read both of them because they go together. Now, we've heard the first one before. Rolex SS sport watches were never tool watches. They were backup watches for the country club set, so they didn't damage their 18K gold day dates. Well, if you look at the timeline of Rolex, you can see that that's patently false. The day date came out in 1956, and by then, the tool watch was already established, and it had performed in the field. The years before the day date, in 1953, the Explorer was released, and that was sort of a tribute to the summit of Mount Everest earlier that year. And then in 1953, the Sub was released. And in 1954, the GMT was released, and that was commissioned by Pan Am, so their international pilots could have a watch that dealt better with time zones and changing time zones and whatnot. And if that's not a definition of a tool watch, then I would like to hear Jimmy V's definition of what one is. Now, the fact is, these watches started out as tool watches, and around the same time were marketed to the country club set. I agreed there. But that's not to say they couldn't perform and they weren't used as tool watches by real explorers, real adventurers, and real people doing extreme things. It's an interesting comment, and I'd like to hear you guys weigh in. Is Jimmy V right? Was Rolex never a tool watch? Or is he wrong? Let me know in the comment section what you think. Take care. Thanks for watching. See you next time.